Right, good morning and welcome to the decision session, Executive Member for Economy and Strategic Planning. I'm Councillor Andrew Waller. Working through the agenda, item 1, declarations of interest. I don't have anything that isn't already included on the register of interests in relation to the business today. 2, minutes of the meeting held on the Tuesday, the 15th of June. I'm happy to sign those with the replacement of the word quantum on page 3 with scale. Other than that, the minutes seem an accurate record. Okay, right. That brings us on to item 3, public participation. There are, as I understand, no members of the public or members of council registered to speak. So that brings us on to item 4, update on the progress of the Minerals and Waste Joint Plan.
Good morning, Councillor Waller. Good morning, everyone. Just to say, before I ask Anna to just talk us through the report, this is a milestone in the development of the Minerals and Waste Joint Plan. Officers and members of the council have spent an awful lot of time inputting into this, and I think generally we are pleased with the positive inputs we'd had into the formation, the shaping of this plan, particularly some of the policies that relate to safeguarding residents and the environment from shale gas exploration. So at this point, I'll hand over to Anna just to talk through the main points of the report, and I think particularly the steps to follow. Thank you.
Thank you, Mike. Yes, this report relates to the Minerals and Waste Joint Plan. It's a joint plan that's being produced jointly by the City of York Council, North Yorkshire County Council and North Yorkshire Moors National Park Authority. The joint plan will set out new planning policies for minerals and waste developments across the joint plan area to guide decisions on planning applications up to the 31st of December 2030. The joint authorities submitted the plan to the Secretary of State in November 2017, and we've had examinations in public between February and April 2018 and also in January 2019. This report sets out the key main modifications required to make the joint plan following the examination, and also some changes to government policy since the submission in 2017. For example, the NPPF policy 209A has been quashed following a High Court challenge by talk fracking. In addition, a moratorium has been published by the government in November 2019, which means a presumption against issuing any more hydraulic fracturing consents until there's more evidence on seismic activity. The joint authorities have also undertaken work in terms of the habitats regulation assessment on the joint plan in relation or in response to the decision at the High Court of Justice of the European Union, which has led to a reassessment of a series of sites in the plan and the need for appropriate assessments. None of those sites are within the York area, they're within the North Yorkshire County Council area and the National Park area. We have received statutory consultation from the Environment Agency and also Natural England, and their comments have been taken into account in relation to the main modifications. So the key or the full schedule of main modifications is set out at Annex A to this report. I'm going to focus on some of the modifications that are most pertinent to the City of York Council Authority area. So the main one, it relates to the policies in relation to hydrocarbons, which is policy M16 and particularly policy M17, and its justification, although it includes new government guidance, there is the retention of the 500-metre buffer around sensitive receptors and residential properties. The inspector is also content with the retention of the buffer, the 500-metre buffer, and has agreed that that's a sound approach. We've also included some additional references in relation to climate change and additional references in relation to the Green Belt and York's historic character and setting to be in line with national policy. And we've also included additional review and monitoring of the plan as well. So those are the key changes. As Mike said, we're also at the main modification consultation stage. So that is an 8-week consultation which started last Wednesday, which is the 21st of July, and it will finish at 5 p.m. on Wednesday, the 15th of September. There is a poster explaining about the consultation and where the consultation documents can be viewed in all of the York libraries. A press release has also gone into the Yorkshire Post, Northern Echo and the York Press. It's also been advertised by social media. We've also distributed a letter or an email to the consultees on the local plan databases to say where people can see the documents. A paper copy is also available here at West offices on an appointment only basis, in case anybody wants to see a hard copy of that. As I say, it's by a pre-booked appointment only. That's also the case at the principal office at North Yorkshire County Council and at the National Parks. You can see paper copies there. In the report, it sets out how people can email or gives the postal address if people want to respond to this consultation. It's obviously also online and it's on the posters in the libraries. In terms of next steps, once the consultation finishes in September, officers will code the responses and send those to the inspector. We will then obviously need to wait for the inspector's report, and then it will come back through our committee cycles, local plan working group, executive and full council, and hopefully for adoption. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that summary of the paper. I'd like to thank officers for their work in maintaining the vigilance on this report and the Minerals and Waste Joint Plan. A moratorium can easily be reversed. And it's very telling that the moratorium came in just weeks before a general election when it may have been an inconvenience. So I think it's important to have raised awareness for this, which is why I asked for this report to come forward, that for an area so dependent upon tourism to be seen across the world as the gas fields of Britain would not have been an encouragement to come and visit, particularly when staycations are such an important part of the current economy. I'm grateful for all of the effort that's gone into proving the 500-metre distance between main receptors, and that includes humans. And that the days that we spent, and you spent even longer days in County Hall listening to the inquiry, and the inspector was very aware of the national significance of the adoption of this plan, and therefore exceedingly cautious in the way in which she proceeded, and therefore to give an evidence-based approach which would stand up to significant opposition from the industry was an important feature. Also, to acknowledge the work done to wrap in climate change as an aspect of this. It's something that I know that many councillors in the authority take very seriously, and it would contradict the nation's chairing of COP26 to be embarking on this sort of activity when investment in renewable power would be more appropriate. Going through the appendix, it would be an important local policy, page 25, and the seismic activity also recognises the many historic buildings in the vicinity which were not built with significant foundations, and I am grateful to those clergy who have make sure I'm very aware of that. And that would have an added danger to York, that if our historic buildings were undermined literally, then we really would be in a very poor position. So I'm conscious there's a lot of detail in here, but it's important to get people to comment in support of those things with which they are in support, so that that can be summarised for the inspector to see that this is how particularly this city thinks of this process. So I'm happy to approve this report, and I would encourage residents in the city to engage with the consultation process, and I'm grateful for the effort and time that will be put in. It's not always an easy task to do in the midst of a pandemic, but I think that it is an important feature and is being approached in the most responsible way possible. So thank you very much. So just for the record, I approve recommendations in 3. Thank you very much. That then brings us on to agenda item 5, the quarterly economic update.
Thank you, Councillor Waller. I'd just like to introduce this report with a few summarising comments, and then I'll hand over to Simon Brereton to take you through some of the detailed evidence base in support of this report. It's the kind of next chapter in setting out the response of York's economy to the multiple challenges that we're currently facing on a global stage, and the 2 largest of which are the COVID pandemic and its impact on the economy, but also as we start to see the unwinding impacts of Brexit on our economy. And for York, it's a game of 2 halves, to use a football analogy. We have, I think, responded really strongly to those challenges, and the economy, as you'll see in this report, is bouncing back quite strongly, with footfall in the city back to pre-pandemic levels, and significant evidence of a pattern of local spend from York and its surrounding area, even during lockdown, which is very encouraging. And with significant investment interest and demand for property also exhibiting itself in the city. That is not to say that it's a rosy picture throughout, and we do still see some significant challenges, particularly in recruitment of staff, and also in supply chain effectiveness, which again has been impacted by multiple things. And although the unemployment levels within the city have increased less than in other places, they are still at the highest level they've been since 1997. And that's clearly something that we are trying strenuously to look at what we can do to impact on that. So I'll draw your attention to some of the activities that we've set out about the work of the team, to bring the Make It York Economic Development team to join up with Simon's Economic Development team in the council. So we've got one resource to be able to pull together a significant amount of activity, and to continue our work on the economic strategy, to look at the skills element, like in particular, given the challenges as they unwind within the city. And the report also sets out the work that we've done on the Good Business Charter, the Transform Challenge with university students that we undertook last month, a review of the micro grants and all the impact of the grants activity that the council has supported in the last 18 months, and then further work on supporting traders and traders associations. And just to highlight that this afternoon, Councillor Waller and the Lord Mayor will be hosting a hospitality summit, where representatives of the hospitality sector will gather together socially distanced to be able to discuss the challenges and how they how we will continue to push hard to mitigate the negative impacts and support the economic growth of the city. I'll hand over now to Simon to take us through some of the evidence base set out in the report.
Thank you very much, Tracy. As we've highlighted there, range of statistics showing different things. Let's just begin though with consideration of the current situation with regard to claimant count unemployment. There are actually figures that have been published since this report was out, and that shows a further drop of 500 in the claimant count in York. We're actually now back down to below the peak of the 2009 recession and dropping sharply. Good to see that. So the claimant count is now down below 4,000, with the sharpest drop being in the most deprived wards as well. So 500 people have found a job in June. That's the figures are to the end of June, and the claimant count in Westfield ward has gone down by more than 10% in that month. So some reassurance, and clearly there are still 4,000 people out there without a job, and for them it's very cold comfort to see others doing well, but pleased to see the economy recovering, and despite all the anecdotal evidence we have that there are challenges in terms of recruitment, there are nonetheless people finding work at the same time. But we are hearing that very clearly from sectors across the whole of the economy, but certainly not simply hospitality and retail that are finding it difficult to fill vacancies at the moment. It's across all roles. Social care finding it difficult to get people. Jobs which require technical qualifications are typically finding it hard to recruit. So vacancies for project managers, for IT specialists, as well as for drivers and for people working in our hotels and restaurants. We presented a bit of analysis in terms of pay levels in York. I'll highlight some of the challenges with the statistics in the report. They're based on the government's annual survey of hours and earnings, which happens in April each year and is then published in October. So the latest figures from last October actually reflect April 2020. And when the figures are published in October this year, they will be from April 2021. I think that's an important date because since the reopening as we've moved through the steps, particularly in May, you recall the May the 17th date, we have seen that is when the challenges in terms of recruitment have come forward, and we are certainly hearing from some employers that they're pushing up pay levels. But if there is an increase in pay in York, it will be a couple of years really before that's really shown in the statistics. So it'd be great to have a more up-to-date set of statistics on that, but it certainly is the most comprehensive figures that we see. So I've compared that to the real living wage, which I think is a good comparator. It's certainly a key part of the Good Business Charter, which Tracy touched on. The real living wage for York is £9.50 per hour. The figures from last year show that only the lowest 10% paid people in full-time work in York are paid below that rate, but around half of all part-time workers are paid below that rate. And because there is so much part-time work in York, that means that something like 1 in 5 of our workers are paid below the real living wage. We hope that focusing on the Good Business Charter will be a way to encourage employers to think more longer term in terms of what they're able to pay staff, and that then is reflected in the earnings of people in York. The furlough figures and the job retention scheme, the self-employment income support scheme figures, which I've been highlighting throughout the pandemic as a challenge for when those schemes unwind. The most up-to-date figures we have for that are to the end of May at the moment, but they showed around 40% drop in the number of people reliant on those sources of funding between January and May. Still around just over 12,000 people in York at the end of May were reliant either on furlough payments or on self-employment income support scheme payments. and those people remain at some risk as we move through the coming months. And what we hope is a continued return to certainly economic normality. In terms of young people apprenticeships, we have had quite a change in what we've seen in recent years. It's always been a challenge to get enough apprenticeships available for the young people that would like to be apprentices. We now see the reverse, so that there are now 180 apprenticeship vacancies within 15 miles of York, and there is a shortage of candidates for apprenticeships. There'll be a focus in Adult Learning Week, which is the week beginning, I think, the 6th of September, on apprenticeships as options for young people as they consider now what they're doing, having left school. But clearly the disruption we've seen in the education system will, to some extent, work its way through into perhaps some different decisions that young people will make when they're thinking about what they might do after they finish school. We'll bring a fuller report back to your next decision session in September on where we are with the apprenticeship levy transfer. Clearly that is also impacted by the number of vacancies and the lack of candidates out there as well, but we have made progress in terms of implementing that scheme. I'll talk a little around the work we're doing with the skills plan. The City Skills and Employment Board, which of course you're part of, Councillor Waller, considered the 10-year strategy draft at its last meeting of last week. Work is progressing well on that. In terms of the 1-year skills plan, which we brought to executive last June, we are currently training volunteers up at Foxwood Community Hub to be able to offer information, advice and guidance for people presenting there with needing employment. And there's a lot of great partnership work going across the skills sector in terms of trying to make sure that the support is there for people when they want to think about what they're going to do next if they need to find another job. That will also be touched on this afternoon, I'm sure, at the Hospitality Summit. More broadly, the city centre economy, I won't say much more than Tracy said already, but we are seeing strong recovery in numbers in the city centre, and that's also being seen in spend as well. The work that at your last decision session in person before the pandemic considered changing the way that we, or modernising the way that we record people in the city centre, and we started that pilot with the bid using the movement insights model. Please be able to show you a couple of outputs from that in terms of appendices to this report, but they do give us a much more fine-grained sense of not just how many people there are in the city centre, but actually where they've come from, what they're spending. And it does show the reliance of on people from more than 50 kilometres away, but also pleasing reconnection, I think, that we've all seen and experienced between the people of York and York city centre, as it's become less a place that's full of people coming from elsewhere and much more of a place where people are going out for their own leisure purposes and to enjoy the city centre. Outside of the city centre, I say those employment recruitment challenges are seen across the whole of the economy. We're also seeing increasing numbers of businesses now looking really positively at growth. So a high percentage of businesses considering growth at the moment, and that brings with it interest in workspace. So we've seen some speculative industrial units being put up around York, which is really shows a strong market there. And there is still very strong demand for whatever space there is available in York. We're looking forward to bringing the Make It York business team into the council and working together with them much more closely in terms of how we support existing businesses in York, and also how we develop our inward investment offer for the city as well. But I think the general message is there are some challenges there. There's clearly challenges in terms of recruitment. There are still a whole number of people who are out of work, but all the indications are that the York economy is actually doing pretty well, as we'd expect, and we can be, I think, quite hopeful that we have a good few years ahead of us. So the economic strategy that we're developing at the moment, I think it's a really timely piece of work now, a good time to be doing that. The consultation exercise, our big conversation, is still open, so we encourage businesses and residents to continue to input into that that online survey, which will be open until the end of the month. Thank you.
Thank you, Simon. Thank you, Tracy. Just a few points that I wanted to cover. Grateful for all of this information in one place, and I understand that scrutiny will be looking at this tonight. In terms of the shortfalls in available people, particularly HGV, LGV drivers, and chefs and other parts of the hospitality industry, it would be useful to see how the skills work overlays on to that. As mentioned by Tracy in the run-up, some of this is the unravelling of Brexit, and therefore the importance of growing your own. I'm conscious of discussions with some business sectors that lockdowns have meant that people have reassessed how far they are willing to commute, and therefore there is even more importance on being able to fully utilise the workforce within the city and the immediate area, but the days of daily long commutes are diminishing. But that's a potential. And in paragraph 11, in terms of the impact on wages in the city, I'd be grateful for the next quarterly report to include a detailed analysis of that, so that paragraph 11 and 12, where you talk in 12 about the 1 in 5 workers paid below the real living wage, I am concerned that those may be concentrated, and probably are concentrated, in particular communities within the city, and therefore it's important to demonstrate what we as an authority are doing to ensure that all communities benefit from the strength of the York economy. Conscious of the ward breakdowns of unemployment figures, and it is reassuring that there has been strong improvement in those areas initially hardest hit by unemployment. And I'm conscious as a school governor the impact that that's had on families in the area. So therefore it's important that communities and sectors are included. The aspect of paragraph 17, the intermediate apprenticeships, I think that would again be important to see within the skills element of the next quarterly report. And in respect to 18, I think it's important to have the voice of young people within this. So just as there was the work with the university students on the the consultation on My City Centre and engaging a younger age group, the Transform Student Challenge, I think because we got a youth council, it would be worth just speaking to them, because they will have this perception. So if young people are seeing that there's been so much disruption that they just want to continue in full-time education as long as possible, then it's understanding where that comes from. I appreciate that you don't have a vast team to go out and survey, but seeing as that is an operation that happens anyway, it would be useful for them to feel engaged. In paragraph 21, it's important that all the resources available from government are fully utilised, and Kickstart has been a little problematic for some businesses to access. And I appreciate that we are going to lobby on that. The mention of modernising the footfall monitoring, which was done just before the first lockdown, has enabled us to have more real-time information than ever before, and at a time when we really did need it, and working very closely with the bid. So that turned out to be exceedingly timely. Obviously, in paragraph 26, you mentioned John Lewis, and they've again been in touch with the steps that they've taken. And nationally, they've had even more job losses since the significant number of store closures. So that's something to watch. But equally, the statistics given at the Indy York AGM showed that there was a strong startup aspect within the city. And it's encouraging that regeneration of Coney Street came to the executive last week, and that demonstrates positive action in one area of the city centre, which is showing its age in terms of being a little dated in the footplate of the stores. Be grateful for an update on that in the next quarterly report, and equally with Make It York, the restoring of one team to work for the economic benefit of the city is important, and I'm very pleased to see that happen eventually, after warning that it was not the best thing to do, to splinter the resource. But I think it's important that we demonstrate the impact that is having, and in terms of inward investment, that is providing a strong message outside of the city as well. The report was written with a bit of crystal ball activity. So yes, there has been the announcement on local government reorganisation, which a significant amount of activity went into maintaining York's ability to take decisions for York in York. I'm just grateful if you provide an update on the LEP situation, because Parliament is now in recess and it's not exactly clear. So if you would like to just give an update now on where we are.
Yes, there's also been a review of local enterprise partnerships, which the government has been doing. That the results of that have not yet been published, but what we're hearing in terms of the kind of early smoke signals from that is an expectation that that LEP activity will be very much focused on trade and investment work. So both attracting inward investors into the UK, but also helping UK's businesses to export and trade with the rest of the world. And then on the Growth Hub, the government support for growing businesses, which the York Growth Hub team is part of what will be joining my team from Make It York. So there'll be a refocusing of, we are led to believe, of LEPs on those specific aspects of economic development and business development. The other main aspect that the LEP have covered in terms of infrastructure funding and growth funding for, and York has been successful in attracting funding, for instance, towards York Central and the station developments, and also for some of our highway developments as well. That work will become more focused through, in the first instance, through local authorities, but perhaps as we move into the new world of devolution through a combined authority, if such a thing is established for York and North Yorkshire. So local government and its mechanisms being the focus for government funding into local investment in infrastructure, and the LEPs becoming the real focus for government investment into the business community. So a bit of a refocusing of what the LEP's been around in York, but I've actually very much in parallel, well, it reflects what we've been trying to focus on in terms of bringing the Make It York team into the council and making sure that we up our offer in terms of inward investment and also in terms of business support.
Right, thank you for that. There are a lot of activities going into York Business Week, and I think that's an opportunity to showcase the actions that are going on. There are some very positive steps being taken and confidence from businesses to invest in the city, and therefore it's useful to take time to celebrate that and to let everyone be aware of those opportunities when we're all in need of good news. I'm grateful for the work that's gone into York becoming the UK's first good business charter city. I'm aware of, a long examination of the array of different award certificates that are available, and this was not a rushed decision. And this is about the authority taking a lead. It can't do everything in the economy, but it can certainly through this and application of the apprentice levy demonstrate to others what can be achieved and where things need to be changed that we will lobby. Grateful for the work on the micro grants analysis. That was useful to see the impact that it had, but also the way in which that is feeding through into the pipeline of grant activity that we're applying for on behalf of the city. So it's an ongoing process rather than a one-off. We've touched on the University of York Student Challenge, and I think involving young people is important. A lot of the discussions that go on are from city leaders and business leaders, and there's some distance off, as I feel myself, from being a young person, and therefore appreciating the impact that COVID has on their view of their opportunities is an important feature. Grateful for the work on secondary shopping areas, and it would be important to help show how this develops an outcome to show other cities where there are an established city centre, but equally strong neighbourhood shopping areas. So thank you for all of that collation of information. So just to summarise, I am asked in paragraph 6 to note the contents of the report, and I will note with addition requests for detail in the subsequent quarterly report, an update specifically on the impact of communities in particular sectors of the work, particularly with skills, the impact of recombining the economic development team with Make It York, and the changes with the LEP process and how that impacts on the economic strategy and work of the team. Is that clear? So I'm grateful for the work here. So thank you very much. We've covered that, and we'll be covering that in the scrutiny meeting tonight. So that brings me on to item 6, urgent business. There's no urgent business being reported to me. Therefore, I'll draw the meeting to a close. Thank you.